So today we're diving into the story of Anuradhapura, a city in Sri Lanka with a history that is just epic. For an incredible 1,500 years, this place was the island's political and religious heart, a sprawling metropolis that, as we're about to see, rose from literally nothing, fell into ruin, and then was reborn from its own sacred roots. You know, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of what makes Anuradhapura so special. This isn't just a bunch of old ruins. It's a place defined by a living memory. The amazing thing is, history here isn't something you just dig up. It's still alive, still growing, quite literally reaching for the sky.
And here it is, the living, breathing proof of that history. Over 2,300 years. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. This single tree has witnessed the entire rise and fall of the Roman Empire, countless dynasties, and the birth of the modern world. It is the anchor for our entire story.
So, let's kick things off by looking at how this one living thing became the absolute spiritual core that an entire civilization was built around.
What's so incredible here is the central idea. The Jayasri Mahabodhi isn't just a symbol in the city, it is the city's origin point. It's believed to be a direct physical piece of the very tree under which the Buddha himself attained enlightenment, which makes it one of the most sacred relics in all of Buddhism. And what a journey it was. A cutting was taken from that original, legendary Bodhi tree, carried by sea all the way from India by a nun named Sanghamitta, and then personally planted by the Sri Lankan king. This one act kicked off the official arrival of Buddhism on the island and started an unbroken chain of protection by kings and monks that has lasted for, you guessed it, over 2,300 years.
Okay, so you have this sacred tree at the heart of everything. But how do you go from that to a massive, powerful capital city? Let's get into the rise of the city itself.
As you can see, people had been living here since the Iron Age, way back around 900 BCE. But the city as we know it really got its start in the 4th century BCE, when King Pandukabhaya formally planned it out. The true game changer, though, was a century later, when that sacred tree arrived. That's the event that turned Anuradhapura from just another capital into a major spiritual center. Buddhism wasn't just adopted, it became the city's blueprint.
And we're not talking about some small town. The scale here was just immense. A carefully planned city, a full square kilometer with different areas for different trades and massive public projects. For its time, this was a true metropolis, a real beacon of civilization in South Asia.
So, how did they pull it off? How did such a huge city survive in Sri Lanka's pretty dry climate? Well, the answer is this idea, a hydraulic civilization. It's a fancy term, but what it really means is that they were masters of water engineering. They built these gigantic man-made lakes, they call them tanks, and connected them with a complex web of canals. This wasn't just for farming, it was a way to control the entire environment, support a huge population, and show everyone the king's power.
All right, so the city is secure, it's thriving, and now it enters its golden age. This was a time of unbelievable confidence, where they started building monuments that were meant to last forever.
And again, just like that number sink in, 1,500 years. That is a ridiculously long time for any city to stay on top as the capital. That kind of stability is what allowed for centuries of art, culture, and architecture to just flourish on a massive scale.
And the legacy from that time, it's just breathtaking. The skyline was dominated by these colossal dome-shaped buildings called stupas. The Jetavanaramma stupa was so enormous it was actually one of the tallest structures in the entire ancient world, right up there with the pyramids in Egypt. And these weren't just monuments. They were the hearts of huge monastery complexes. They were like universities, hospitals, and libraries all rolled into one.
But you know how these stories go. No empire, no matter how great, lasts forever. After centuries of being on top, Anuradhapura's golden age started to tarnish, leading to its eventual and really dramatic collapse.
Being so rich and powerful, well, it made the city a huge target. For hundreds of years, it had to deal with this cycle of invasions, especially from powerful dynasties in South India. And every single attack just chipped away at the kingdom, making it weaker and weaker.
And then in 993 CE, the final blow landed. A Chola king, Rajaraja I, sacked the city so brutally that it was finally abandoned. The capital was moved somewhere else, and for the first time in 1,500 years, Anuradhapura was left to fend for itself. And the jungle, well, the jungle began its slow, silent takeover, swallowing the great monuments one vine at a time.
And fast forward 800 years, and listen to this description from a British traveler in 1821.
a small, mean village in the midst of a desert. The once mighty capital, one of the greatest cities in Asia, had been reduced to almost nothing. What a fall. Just gone.
But that's not where the story ends. Not even close. The final act is an amazing one, of rediscovery, and a modern mission to save this ancient legacy for all of us.
So how do you bring a city like this back from the brink? Well, it started with British archaeologists, but the real push came after Sri Lanka's independence, and it involved a few key steps. The big one, the really radical idea, was the 1949 Preservation Plan. They decided to build an entirely new, modern city right next door and move the entire population and all the government buildings over there. This brilliant move left the ancient capital to be protected as a dedicated, secret city. And that vision is what led to it becoming a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1982.
And this perfectly illustrates the solution they came up with. Today, you have two Anuradhapuras, side by side. You've got the sacred city, this quiet, sprawling park of history and pilgrimage, and then you have the new town, a busy, modern city. This separation is exactly what saved the ancient city from being lost under modern concrete and asphalt. And that brings us right back to today. The city is not some dusty, dead museum. Because of all this hard work, it's once again a living, breathing spiritual center. Pilgrims from all over the world travel here to see the ancient stupas, and of course, to visit that sacred Bodhi tree, connecting to a chain of belief that goes back thousands of years. Which really leaves you with this one big question, doesn't it? The palaces are ruins, the kings are long gone, the empire is history. But the tree, the city's living heart, it's still there. It seems to suggest that while political power comes and goes, a spiritual anchor can give a place a kind of immortality. Makes you wonder, what is it that really lets a legacy last, while everything else just turns to dust?